Ricky Mathews joins us right now. He is host of the Ricky Mathews Show right here on SuperTalk Mississippi and also of SuperTalk Outdoors. Always good to see you. Good morning, Ricky.
Good morning, Richard. Good to see you, my friend.
I appreciate you joining me. You have worked in the media industry in both coastal Mississippi and the New Orleans area with the Times-Picayune for a long time. I thought of you immediately because of your love for the outdoors when I was reading this story and the letter that the Lieutenant Governor sent about the Bonnet Carré. Give us like the Reader's Digest version, a condensed Reader's Digest version of the Bonnet Carré and what it has meant for New Orleans, for South Louisiana, and also for Mississippi.
Yeah, I think, as you pointed out, the Great Flood of 1927 created what is essentially, as you pointed, this mile-and-a-half structure called the Bonnet Carré Spillway. People drive across it going from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. You may not realize what you're driving across, but it was made to essentially protect the levee system of New Orleans and has worked extremely well in that regard. But unfortunately, the Mississippi Sound is the sacrificial lamb. So all that fresh water coming from so many states and even Canadian province is full of polluted water and over-nutrification from farms, etc., and freshwater flood into Lake Pontchartrain, into Lake Borgne, and eventually into the Mississippi Sound. And that's not meant to be there. The Mississippi Sound is a semi-enclosed estuarine complex that is not meant to have all that water rushing into it. And, I tell you, what's interesting, Richard, is I got calls over the weekend from charter boat captains, and I talked about this yesterday on my show. What's about to happen is not what happened in 2019. 2019, it was open for 123 days. That's not the case this time. And so I think a lot of people are putting the 2019 frame on what's about to happen. If it does happen, we'll know today or tomorrow maybe that it's going to be the kind of gut punch we got in 2019, and we're not expecting that.
So 8 days ago, on April 21st, that was the point at which waters actually reached the spillway. And there were officials that said they couldn't test to make sure that it was operational the way it was supposed to be until water actually was against the spillway. They opened that up, and I think that's kind of what's prompted the outrage. We're at about the time in the next day or two where they're looking at the crest of the river. I think 16 and a half feet I read is the height
that's
at
right.
which they're concerned. So what's going to happen in the next couple of days? Are they going to open the Bonnet Carré?
Well, Jay Grimes, in fact, I knew Jay Grimes when I worked in Alabama. In fact, he's a climatologist for Louisiana, and he says it's relative certainty that it will have to open, but for a very short period of time. What they did is what you're referring to is they do a test opening to get ready, and then they wait till the cubic yards per second or cubic gallons per second or whatever the phrase is they use gets to a certain level, and then they open it. And they're only expecting 10 to 14 days and only a few of the bays, not a full scale opening. Listen, a tremendous amount of damage happened in 2019, and it prompted a Mississippi Sound coalition. It prompted state leaders and federal leaders to all get involved and say, wait a minute, Mississippi doesn't even have a voice in this discussion. At least now we have a voice in the discussion. They have to consider the environmental impact. There's another spillway up the river from there called the Morganza, and it's not open. There are lots of theories about it. People speaking out who live in the downstream areas of that, saying we don't want that, just like we don't want it. And there's also concerns about the stability of the Morganza. So what we've learned, though, is that there's maybe some other things that they can do. And, so we're having important conversations about it. But the most important message right now is that this will not be 2019. We're not seeing nearly the volume of water or anything like that. And the fishing right now on the Mississippi Gulf Coast is as good as it's been in a long time. And the water at the Berry Islands is crystal clear. It's beautiful. And even if they open it for a short period of time, at least for saltwater fishing like speckled trout and redfish, it actually may push some of the redfish and specks from places like Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Borgne into the Mississippi Sound. Now, I don't want to minimize the impact on the oyster industry the issues with the bottlenose dolphins, et cetera. That's a big issue, and we're right to stay focused on it. But we this will not be 2019. This will not be the gut punch of 2019 unless something changes dramatically.
So with a lot of the backwaters in South Louisiana, they're described as brackish. It's that mix of fresh water and salt water. It's not the full concentration that you get if you go on vacation to I don't know, Gulf Shores, or you go to Destin or somewhere like that, and the salt content just takes your breath away. What is the content of the Mississippi Sound? Is it full on salt water? Is it described as brackish?
No. The Mississippi Sound is salt water. It's
okay.
It's an amazing estuarine complex. Now look, when there's heavy rain, obviously, coming from Biloxi Bay and other tributaries, you'll see it turn brackish for a period of time. But as a general rule, when you don't have the heavy rains, or you don't have, for example, a Bonnet Carré Spillway, it's quite salty. And it can be, man, let me tell you, Richard, like right now, if you go to Cat Island, for example, or Ship Island, it feels like Key West. The water is so clear and so beautiful, and the fishing is so good. It literally feels like Gulf Shores or Destin, or in some cases Key West. We're very lucky, but because of the influx of the rivers, or the outflow of the rivers during heavy rain events, you'll see that fluctuate from time to time.
So is the biggest concern as it pertains to the Mississippi Sound, is it the fresh water that's coming in from the river, or is it all the other stuff that is mixed in with the fresh water, or is it a combination of the two?
Oh, it's definitely both. But, you think about it. I was on the Gulf of Mexico Advisory Committee at one point, and we used to say 26 states, contiguous states, but I think they're saying 31 these days. And Canadian provinces all flow into the Mississippi River. So imagine the pesticides and fertilizer and, hog farms and you name it, and the fresh water all flowing in. None of it's good.
Yeah. Does the economic impact of flooding in South Louisiana so far outweigh the economic impact of the Mississippi Sound that's the reason that there seems to be an imbalance?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, look, just go back to Hurricane Katrina. When you think what happened to the levee system in New Orleans and how bad it was, that wasn't even nearly the worst case scenario. Think about that for a second. It could have been so much worse. So protecting the levee system in New Orleans is critical. And look, we talk about this all the time. Gulf Coast we're related. We're all cousins. We're part of the greater New Orleans metro complex. Let's put it that way. After Katrina, we often said this, that in order for Mississippi coast to survive and to recover, New Orleans has to recover. So we didn't, the media sort of wanted to pit Mississippi against Louisiana. Oftentimes they didn't even see Mississippi. In fact, one time one of our headlines, the Sun Herald, said Mississippi's invisible coast. But the New Orleans region, for so many reasons, is really important. And the city of New Orleans in particular, we can't have the worst case scenario happen there. So the Great Flood of 1927, they're guarding against another occurrence like the plague. You can imagine how difficult that would be if the actual worst case scenario were to happen. We can't allow that to happen. So, but it can't just be the Bonnet Carré Spillway. There has to be a combination of things that we enact. So that's where the conversations are happening now. Thank goodness.
You good to hang with me for a couple more minutes?
Sure. Be happy to.
We're going to visit with Ricky Mathews, continue the conversation on the other side. He is host of the Ricky Mathews Show and also Mississippi Outdoors right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. If you walk around in New York City and you look up, you can't help but marvel at the architectural and engineering feat that some of those buildings are. If you look at pictures or you've seen in person the Bonnet Carré Spillway, it kind of falls into that exact same category. It is an absolutely engineering marvel. Talk a little bit more about that and some of the other things that are happening in coastal Mississippi with Ricky Mathews when we come back with you to wrap up the 7 o'clock hour. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back right after this. Back with you, Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday morning, next last day of the month of April. Told you earlier there was a relatively early press briefing in D.C. this morning. Caroline Leavitt, Scott Bessent, and others from the cabinet involved with this, including this note, Ricky. The Department of the Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day. We know cutting regulations leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by the administration will help usher in the golden age of America. Oil production in the Gulf. We know that that is a very real thing. It's something that is important for the refineries on the Gulf Coast. Such a big part of the economy in coastal Mississippi.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, it is. I mean, and think about just the economy that supports the industry, how coastal Mississippi is connected to that. I just can't tell you how important it is. And we've got to, we should have our foot on the pedal, not taking our foot off the pedal. You know, look, I've had lots of conversations about this. I'm sure you have as well, as it relates to what the Biden administration was doing as it related to energy policy and trying to push EV cars, et cetera. That's not being realistic at all, given that we're an oil economy. And the opportunity for us as we go forward, as we really focus on not just drill, baby, drill, but really the role that coastal Mississippi in particular plays. When you look at the oil industry off our coast, when you look at the importance of this strategically important, I mean, listen, Chevron refinery is not just important to this state and this region, but it's important to the United States. And we saw that after Hurricane Katrina when it was down for a very short period of time. Our gas prices are lower as a result of it. But what they're doing, the amount of oil that's coming into that refinery, Richard, to really appreciate it, you need to go out and go fishing with us someday and look at the number of
invitation
big
accepted
ships.
If I can bring my son with me.
Oh, I'd love to have you come join us. And we will show you the oil tankers lined up trying to get into the port of Pascagoula to unload. It is an unbelievable machine that we have here in coastal Mississippi around that.
I want to ask you about something because you and I have had this conversation before. I feel like the Mississippi Gulf Coast, coastal Mississippi as you refer to it, is more connected with the rest of Mississippi than maybe historically it has been. But it's still a long way from Oxford or New Albany or Iuka to Gulfport or Pascagoula. And so I feel like there's almost a disconnect in people in the northern part of the state, and I'm painting with a really broad brush here Ingalls, shipbuilding, refineries, and they're like, oh yeah, that's down in the southern part of the state of Mississippi, right there on the edge. Can you, in a minute, help us understand what the actual economic impact is, the shipbuilding industry and the refinery industry that is part of our state's economy that's so incredibly important?
Yeah, I actually wrote a column about it recently, but in a nutshell, about 15% of the state's population is down here, only 15% when in the scheme of things, but 25% of the revenue for our state is in coastal Mississippi. So when you have Stennis Space Center on one side as a bookend, and then Chevron and Ingalls and Bollinger on the other side as a bookend, and then all the hospitality and gaming that's taking place in the middle. Listen, there are 87,000 direct and indirect jobs reliant on government. I mean, that's military, shipbuilding, Stennis Space Center, et cetera. And then gaming. Those two together. In fact, I've been pressing a lot recently on the need to diversify. Take a few cards out of the playbook from places like the Golden Triangle, and let's go build a regional economic alliance, not in lieu of the others. The other groups in the coast counties have to do what they do from an economic development point of view, but get surrounded around the big stuff. Go build a mega site, and let's get more aggressive about diversifying coastal Mississippi's economy. It's important to the entire state of Mississippi that we not only succeed and keep this machine running, but that we grow. We're a $1.6 billion gaming market now. What would it look like to be a $2 billion gaming market? That's where our heads have to be. And I've been focused on bringing awareness to this for the rest of Mississippi, that if we're not doing well, the rest of Mississippi's not doing well. So goes coastal Mississippi, so goes the rest of the state.
You mentioned the Golden Triangle, and I'm such like a cheerleader, I guess, for what Joe Max and that multi-county alliance has been able to do. And it feels like something that if local leaders are willing to do it, could be replicated in other parts of the state. And I think it's
Joe
an
Max.
extremely important conversation.
Joe Max, I mean, listen, talking about a guy who's easy to underestimate on first blush.
No doubt.
But he goes up to Harvard. He goes to Harvard every year and does case studies. Think about this for a minute. But, man, they're betting on the come. They've done it time after time after time with these mega sites, investing like the most recent one, over $50 million on a mega site. They figured it out, and it has worked.
Yeah, we're out of time. I really appreciate your time this morning. Great catching up, and we'll talk soon.
You bet, my friend. Take care. You're doing a great job, incidentally.
Thank you.